Hi guys, it's Kelly here, and I am back with another video. I'm going to show you a couple of sets here from Altenew. I didn't end up using all of them. I ended up using the handmade tags and the layered cupcake. And so last week I had done a card that was more of like an elegant cupcake. I made a birthday card for my mama. And at the same time that I did that, I also stamped this one, which was just like a little bit more playful with some cookies in the cupcake. And so I still really loved this layout and I wanted to color it. So I'm going to show you, I'm using a full stick Post-it note as my masks, and I put my cupcake mask in place so I could get my cookies right. Anytime you're stamping something that's one layer, like this card is, you want to stamp what they call front to back. So the things that you'll see in the forefront, you want to stamp first. So I have a little macaroon and some chocolate chip cookies that are going to be in the very forefront. I'm going to mask those off, and then I'm going to stamp, there is like a stack of macaroons, which are super cute. So I'm going to stamp those, and then there's another, it's like 3 little cookies placed together. So it's just going to give me a good spread across the whole card. I'm using Intense Black ink by Simon Says Stamp because it's Copic safe, and of course I'm going to be coloring with Copics. Like, I don't even know if I know how to use another medium anymore, honest to God. But anyway, so I'm going to stamp those and mask them, and then the last thing that I will stamp is the actual cupcake. I also did, in the other card, I did a background. There's a stripe for the handmade tags that's included, but then there's also a polka dot, and so I really wanted to use kind of both of them to see what they would look like. For the polka dot, it's the size of the tag. If you buy the dies that match from Altenew, it will cover your tag. And so I'm just kind of playing around with the placement to see what I wanted to do. I decided I was going to leave the bottom edge of the card clean. And I'm using Fog Simon Says Stamp ink, which is a warmish gray color, to go ahead and stamp my background. So I'm going to stamp it one time, and it doesn't cover the whole card because, like I said, it's made for a tag. And then if you just flip it around, which took me a minute to kind of figure out, but the polka dots do line up if you just flip it around. So now let me just say that I started doing this in my mini Misty, and I should have been using the regular size Misty because I actually ran out of room to continue stamping the background, so I ended up having to switch kind of part way through to finish off the stamping. So don't make the same mistake I did. Start in the large Misty or just do it with an acrylic black to line it up. But anyway, so I stamped the whole background, and then we're going to move on to the Copic coloring. So once I removed all the masks, and then I really wanted something that was just kind of a little bit more colorful. The last time I colored the cupcake, it was very kind of subdued colors, and we're heading into spring, and so I wanted to use something that was going to be a little bit more pastel. Pastels are really, really hard for me to color with my Copics because I really like that bold contrast, and a lot of times the softer colors, I just kind of lose them as I'm coloring. So for this one, my darkest color is actually what I would typically use as a mid-tone, which is the R24, and I'm adding the majority of my shading to the left-hand side because I'm coloring as if my light source was in the top right-hand corner, and I'm really just kind of just randomly adding shading to the lines. I wasn't trying to be super specific. I'm coloring it differently than the first time I did, but I think that, you know, kind of branching out and doing things differently will help you, A, get better with your coloring, but B, really just continue to love your stamps. If everything always looked the same every time that you colored it, it would get pretty boring pretty quickly, and I don't want to be bored with my stamps because I bought them and they're kind of like forever, and especially with the way that trends work, a lot of times we feel like we need to have the newest, greatest, but for me, I just feel like, especially with a cupcake image, that's just kind of timeless, and I'll be able to use it for a really long time. So here I'm doing, I did the darkest color, and then I did take my next mid-tone all the way over for the shading, and then I'm kind of blending that out with the R20. I am still leaving some highlight areas. I specifically chose the 20s, the R20s, because they blend really well with each other. The lightest colors do remove quite a bit of the dark, so I knew that if I got too far away from that pastel look, I would be able to fix it. And I was really happy with the way the quote-unquote strawberry frosting came out. I was more happy with it after I added the white highlights, but we'll get to that later. So macaroons are, they're a very lightly flavored style of cookie, and they are typically the color, they match colors. So actually, I think it was last year at one of my craft retreats, one of the girls had made macaroons and brought, and they had a little light pink one just like this, and it was rose flavored, which was very different. Very good, but different. So here for the shading, again, I'm keeping most of the shading on the left-hand side. Macaroons typically have like a crunchy edge, and that's going to be a little bit more shaded. Since I really didn't, it's not all darker. It just has some dark spots from baking. I just kind of dotted in some darker color along that edge and added the majority of my shading on the left-hand side because my light source is on the right. Once I was happy with that, I decided that I was going to do one of the iced cookies in the same pink color. Again, majority of the shading is going to be on the right-hand side. I'm trying to not be too heavy-handed. I didn't want it to bleed out into my background. These ones might be okay because they're lighter, but reds are pretty tough to remove, even with the colorless blender. Then I'm going to move on to the blues. This card actually ended up being a lot of primary colors, which is strange for me. But they just, I guess, were the pastel colors that I liked together. So I'm going to do this blue macaroon here, and I use a B quadruple zero, a B00, a B01, and a B02. That's where's my color scheme. And I kept grabbing the B01 instead of the B00, which probably should have just told me that I didn't need all 4 colors. So if you don't have all 4 of those colors, you're probably going to be fine, because apparently I didn't need them because I was just grabbing the wrong one the whole time anyway. Also, look at the caps of your markers. So I did the shading the same way for this macaroon, and then again with the iced cookie. Now this one is the very bottom cookie, so he's going to have lots of shading underneath where the 2 cookies are sitting on top of him. Look at him, her, on top of it. Apparently I'm just, he looks like a him to me. I don't know why. And then the lightest edge would be more toward that right-hand side. I then decided that I was going to do, on my other card, I did the cupcake holder more of a grayish silver. For this one, I decided that I was going to go ahead and do it blue. Now, in hindsight, I probably would not have colored that top cookie blue. I would have changed it up a little bit and put it on the bottom. But I did what I did, and decisions were made. So here, I'm adding the shading that the macaroons would block the light from the right-hand side, so it would be darker there. So I'm adding in the areas where I know it will be darker. And then typically the bottom of your objects is darker. Also for me, because my light source is in the right-hand side, the left-hand side is going to be a little bit darker. I left the center almost completely white, and then just started adding shading into those little lines because I wanted there to be that contrast, even though they're pastel colors and I don't have anything that's like super dark. Those shaded areas you still want to stick your darkest color in there. So I did every other line so that there would be some peaks and valleys. And this one I pretty much did color almost exactly the same as I did on the first cupcake. There's only so many ways to color a cupcake holder and for it to look the way that it's supposed to look. So I just went through and I did add more shading, like I said, to the left-hand side. I didn't keep any of the white. I kept most of the white in the center. And then the last thing that I did was just go back in with that darkest marker and really add some depth to those lines. We're going to move on here to the yellow. I'm going to color the macaroon on the right and the left yellow. I'm not going to show that to you because I already showed you the first 2. The reason I'm showing you the yellow is because somewhere along the way I lost my mind. And I felt like I needed something else that was yellow. I felt like the card needed some balance, and I just became an insane person and decided that I was just going to draw some balloons freehand on my card. So I did that. I really felt like it needed something. I probably should have dug through my stamps to find something that was going to fit, but I didn't. I just made it up on the fly. And it actually wasn't like the worst thing I ever did. I'm still going to send the card to its recipient. It just, I don't, maybe I'm probably being too picky. And I think we all have a tendency to do that. But anyway, we're going to move on to the coloring of the balloons that I just drew for some random reason. So typically I will draw like a darker line on, like for me it's going to be on the left because my bright source is on the right. And then just kind of blend out from there. And then also at the bottom where the knot of the balloon is will typically be darker. So I usually add some shading there and then blend out to the mid-tone to the lightest. I tend to leave my highlight on the right-hand side. It's a little easier to see with the blue balloon. Just because it's a darker color, that yellow can be a little difficult to see. But you can see where I'm trying to leave that highlight on the right hand side, and then with my lightest color I'm going right over the yellow balloon, and I'm going to do the same thing with the reds, and this is because balloons are transparent, so you would be able to see some colors through the other balloons. I picked a very thin Copic safe pen to outline them because I always outline all of my images, so I knew I would be going back over it. I just wanted to see what it looked like. And at this stage, it just looks kind of very cartoonish and like it doesn't fit in. It is what it is. I added some strings to that, and I do really think that it gave the card more balance, and it looks much better once we do the outline a second time. So from here, there's like cream or filling in between the macaroons, and I am coloring that with my cool gray markers. That macaroon on the left-hand side with the yellow, what is that? The C5 was way, way too dark, and I realized it right away, so I just went in with my colorless blender and kind of blended that out so that it didn't look, very unappealing filling. And then I went in with like a good neutral brown to do the cupcake and then also the cookies. So here I'm just kind of filling in with my lightest color. Again, the majority of the shading is going to be on that right-hand side. It's also going to be underneath the icing. That would make the top of that cupcake darker. And then the areas where the cupcake liner would be set in, those would also kind of cast a shadow. So I made sure to just kind of flick up a little bit of color from there and then blend it out with the lightest color. The cookies, I colored them all, and even the cookies with the icing have like a little bit of an edge there. So I just went all over with my lightest color and then blending from the bottom left up towards the top right, except for this cookie that's all the way in the back there. He got shading on both sides. Give me a second, I'll realize that I need to move it up. So then I colored in the little chocolate chips for the cookie on the right and just added a little bit more of that shading. I'm really kind of in love with the E40s at the moment, just because they are so neutral. And my favorite brown combination is the E55, but it's very warm, and I wanted something just a little bit cooler. So now that all of that coloring is done, we're going to go in and add in some of the shadows. So I'm starting with a C5, and I am going right over any of the coloring that I have, that these objects would be kind of just casting a shadow below. When you have a close dark shadow, it usually means the light source is pretty close. When you have a longer, softer shadow, it usually means your light source is farther away. I wasn't really thinking about any of that. I was just kind of wanting to give it a little bit more depth. So I'm blending out that C5 with the C3. I opted this time not to color the entire, quote-unquote countertop that it's sitting on. I just added in a couple of shadows so that it wouldn't look like it was floating in the air. And then for the last, I just blended it out with my C1. I felt like the white bottom was fine because I had enough color going on. I'm going to use a white gel pen to add in my highlights on my balloons, and then also the cupcake icing and the cupcake liner. So anywhere on that liner that it would be standing up, I added a little bit of a highlight. And then, like I said earlier, I always outline all of my images. It's just I feel like it makes my colors pop and just gives really clean edges to my stamping. And so I did outline everything, including the balloons. I didn't do the strings again, just the actual balloons, and was a little bit more happy with the way that they looked. I'm going to add some clear Wink of Stella to pretty much everything. Yeah, pretty much all the things, because I like me some shimmer. And then I went ahead and stamped my sentiment, which was from the layered cupcake, which is for my sweet friend. And that was the entire card. So I think I did pretty good sticking to the pastels, even though it was kind of trying. I hope that you guys found something that you can take back for your own cards. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.